Holy fucking shit, it's a dinosaur. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Oh my fucking god, fucking dinosaurs. Holy shit, what the fuck?
Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch. Movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens.
I'm Jamie Steens.
And today we are watching one of my Canon films. I don't know if it's one of yours.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but it's ubiquitous. It's not ubiquitous. What do I mean? It's everywhere.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
It's Jurassic Park.
It's Jurassic Park from 1993. So much to talk about here. This could easily go well over an hour, so, buckle up, Buttercup.
I also feel like because everyone's seen it like 8,000 times, like I don't want to tread over things that have already been talked about. So
Too late. We're going to do it all.
I think we should just
doing it all
talk
here.
about what, our personal experience with the movie.
Sure. So, we're doing recaps now, very quickly. Richard Attenborough is playing John Hammond, who's a amusement park / tech mogul, based loosely on Walt Disney, I guess. And we can get into that. And he has found a way to clone dinosaur DNA and create dinosaurs.
Dino DNA.
on an island off the coast of Costa Rica.
Hawaii.
And he brings in, after there's an accident involving a velociraptor, he has to bring, the lawyers make him bring in a lawyer, a scientist, and of the lawyer's choosing, which is Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
And then John Hammond goes and picks up two paleontologists who are played by Sam Neill and
Laura Dern. I believe she's a paleobotanist.
Yes.
Also, I like that you said Jeff Goldblum like he's just the type of scientist, which, in movies he is.
Yeah. So they arrive on the island, and the grandchildren of John Hammond join them, and thanks to Newman, things go sideways.
Newman!
And chaos ensues. The movie also stars Samuel L. Jackson, I think Bob Peck.
B.D. Wong.
B.D. Wong.
A very small part.
Yeah. Very small cast, actually, in this movie.
Yeah.
So... Anyway, I first saw this movie in the opening night. It was the first time I ever went to a midnight screening. At the time, I haven't gone back. I should have reviewed the trailers to verify this. But my memory is there was a hard cut between the movie's trailers, the movie actually getting released, and then what they showed in the new commercials. Mm-hmm. And we'd only really seen up to that point people like running and screaming, and
I want to say the shot that was in the trailers was of the velociraptors steaming into the
kitchen window.
Kitchen window.
Yeah,
because that was a practical effect. They'd probably already done it.
Right. So that was all I really knew. My brother had read the book. I hadn't.
Michael Crichton wrote the book.
Basically did
the script.
Yeah, didn't have enough time to do that kind of free reading in high school. And it's a big, thick book. And anyway, I've
read other Michael Crichton books, and they're very entertaining, but I've not read this one. I felt like after the movie, I was like, well, I get it.
Yeah. And Michael Crichton had previously been responsible for Westworld, so went to the midnight screening, and I had never really had a movie experience like that before. I had no expectations, didn't know what was coming. The first couple minutes of the movie play like a horror film, so I was a little concerned about what I wandered into. And then it was just a roller coaster ride for the next 2 hours. And it's, there's definitely important things to talk about as far as, the implications of what they're talking about. It's become kind of a cultural touchstone for how we talk about a lot of the new genetic science.
Yeah, in fact, this movie is just endlessly quotable, mm-hmm. but one of the phrases that I use most often is, they're so focused on if they could do it, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Right.
Which is a line by, our Jeff Goldblum scientist.
Mm-hmm. Who was based loosely on a mathematician from the University of Texas, my alma mater, so...
Is he?
Yeah, hook 'em. There was some Nobel laureate or whatever at UT at the time who was a chaotician.
Yeah, that's what they claim in the movie, is that he's a chaotician.
Yeah, and everyone became familiar with chaos theory from this, which was not in the 80s something anyone talked about or thought about. We thought of science and math as being very mannered and programmatic. This movie introduced everybody to really the concept of gene splicing, and what you could really, the potential for what you could do with DNA, and really kind of, within 10, 15 years of this movie coming out, we had Dolly the sheep. Mm-hmm. So things were progressing rapidly at this time. I mean, when I was in college, they were really just then being able to fully map DNA, which was, I don't think, true at the time of this movie's release. But I think that was when they did the human genome, was kind of in the mid-90s. And I can only imagine the computing power that was behind that with, what passed for supercomputers in the mid-90s. So,
I have a question to ask you to get back to that, but mm-hmm. first I would like to talk about briefly my experience the first time seeing it. I had a similar experience, and I saw it 2 months after its release. So the summer that this came out, I had major jaw surgery, and it did not go well. And I was in the hospital for almost a month, and then I was in recovery. So, by the time I saw it, it was in August, and it was still playing, and it was still almost a full theater. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even knowing some stuff that happens, like my parents had seen it, my mom actually warned me about the jump scare in it, so that was helpful for me, because everyone else in that theater screamed bloody murder at the jump scare, so I was very grateful to Mom for that. But yeah, I still remember the moment when you first see the giant dinosaurs, the CG dinosaurs. And I just mentally, we never seen anything like that before in movies.
It's so hard to explain to younger people.
It's really hard to explain. And I didn't know what I was looking at. Mm-hmm. like, I hadn't read, the making of or behind the scenes or anything like that. I mean, clearly it was, computers, but I just didn't know how you would do that. And I just was, my face was doing the same thing as the characters on screen. I mean, they're supposedly looking at dinosaurs that were extinct, but we're looking at something that we don't believe could be made either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was really the huge hard pivot from stop motion to CG.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that's out right now on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and it catches up with a guy named Steve Spaz Williams, who I was very familiar with when I was going through film school. I mean, 93 I saw this, started college in the fall with, I should mention, my Jurassic Park pillowcase.
That actually leads into the question I was going to ask you, because I know you were already scheduled to go to UT.
Yeah.
Already had your eyes on the film track.
Yeah.
But did this movie get you even more excited?
Yeah, because, I mean, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, it was wildly intimidating.
Sure.
Because I was not a computer kid. I've worked in IT now for, decades, but at the time, we'd had an Apple IIe that our house got broken into and stolen, and we used the insurance money, I think, to buy a Smith Corona word processor instead of another computer. So I didn't have hands on a computer until about 3 weeks before I left for college. My parents bought a Pac Bell refurb from Best Buy, and that's what I took to college. It was a 386. So, which was awesome. You could take the lid off and swap pieces out. I totally missed that era of computers. But, it got me really fired up of like, man, when I hit LA, like the ceiling's the limit. Before this, it had been really, James Cameron kind of pushing the limits with The Abyss, which Steve Spaz Williams had been involved with, the water tube with what's her name's face on it. T2 definitely. Then with the Robert Patrick, turning into a silver slush. All of which was amazing to see at the time. I do remember my grandfather, who had worked at Eastern in like punch card computing, sitting there trying to explain to me, not knowing at all what he was talking about how they're doing this with computers now. I was like, really, Grandpa? Like we all know that, Grandpa. But it was very sweet of him to want to be engaged as we were watching part of T2 together on TV. But yeah, it was so huge, like you said, to see that dinosaur for the first time. I mean, the air in the room. This was almost
30 years ago, and yes, it has aged a little bit, but it still looks really good.
Yeah.
Like, it's just mind-blowing that, I mean, the stuff in, like, the Attack of the Clones just looks so bad in comparison. It's just like, that was years later. How does that happen? So, as an aside, I took computer graphics my last year of college as part of my computer science degree. I didn't... I was in programming, not computer graphics, so just to make that clear. But my point is, our final project, everyone waited till the last minute, so I spent all night in that computer lab trying to make a 30-second long clip of an animation, and it was like a cat like using his tail to helicopter in from the top of the screen, and it took all night.
Yeah.
Now, we were hand coding in all of the shapes and everything, and they've got tools for that, but they didn't have tools for that back then. So I can only imagine the work that went into this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, ILM had, early Pixar-like stuff, and if you watched any documentaries on Pixar and kind of what they were using that they borrowed from ILM, they had structures in place that you and I did not have access to.
Yeah, but it's not like it is now.
Oh, no. I mean, by 98, 99, I was working in a multimedia lab, and we had a 3D artist by that point on staff.
Yeah.
Who, we were making instructional videos, so it would be like, Eric, go make, 3 test tubes, and we need to show fluid flowing from one to the other. It was that kind of stuff. But that kind of stuff, which had been unimaginable in 93, and for consumers to be doing, was suddenly like, yeah, if we get a powerful enough PC, and we leave it to render overnight, we can have test tubes having liquid flowing from one to another.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was absolutely mind-boggling to be in that theater that first night. No one had seen this thing previously. There was no forewarning. I mean, they kept saying, yeah, the dinosaurs are going to be CG, but that didn't mean anything.
No.
Yeah, it
I mean, the last time that we had really seen a dinosaur on screen was in the 80s when Baby came out. And that was the crappiest looking dinosaur.
Yeah,
I mean, it was practical,
right.
But it was still a really bad practical dinosaur. Like, the practical dinosaurs in this movie actually look really good, too. Is it Triceratops that they first meet? That's a really good it's not model? Would you say model? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park is also basically like a super group movie. Like, you had Steven Spielberg directing, Kathleen Kennedy producing. You had
Stan
Winston doing the puppetry, and Winston's shop is, they've done everything, and they just threw money at Winston's shop, and they were like, we're going to make the best, coolest looking things you've ever seen. And then you had Phil Tippett, who was originally going to be doing all the stop motion, and Phil Tippett was responsible for every cool thing you saw in the 70s and 80s in stop motion. He was really the Ray Harryhausen of the era. It was also, there's a huge subtext to the whole film of, Sam Neill and Laura Dern kind of looking at each other and going, wait a minute, the way we work is suddenly obsolete. And Phil Tippett,
we're going to be out of a job.
Was going through exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, everything he had built his career and everything on. By the way, I should mention Phil Tippett is about to release a self-directed, self-produced feature film called like The Old Gods or something like that. That looks like a bit of a Lynchian horror film. It looks crazy, but he's done it entirely in stop motion. That's what he's been doing with himself like the past decade.
Cool.
And then you had all these guys from ILM coming in, Steve Williams and all these guys, and saying, yeah, we can do it. And they basically, in a very short amount of time, they turned everything around. And the thing that was so seamless at the time was, even as a kid, I was kind of aware of, like, take the Tauntaun and Empire Strikes Back. I knew, okay, that's a big puppet head that they have in front of Luke and for the close-ups. But when we cut to the wide shot, I know that that's a stop. I mean, you can see it's very
obvious. Yeah.
And in this, the first time I saw it, now of course I can spot it, but I couldn't tell the difference between the puppets and the CG. And so, the movie got this reputation of, oh my god, look at the CG. And it's like, well, a lot of what you're talking about being CG is puppets.
A lot of it, yeah.
There's really only a few minutes of CG in this.
The big brontosaurs, like the wide shots, the shot of the dinosaurs running, like all of that is CG. And some of the velociraptors, like leaping up onto the tables in the kitchen, like that couldn't be done by puppets. So.
And like you said, this thing came out and still looks good, fairly good today. And it was all in bright daylight. This is before kind of Lord of the Rings taught everybody, put everything in darkness and it'll hide.
Like all the DC movies, anytime they have a fight scene, it's like, it's nighttime. Yeah. It's a lot of dust for some reason.
Yeah, make sure that no one can see the edges of your crummy CG because we're bathing everything in shadow.
Yeah.
So, that first shot of the dinosaur is in the sun is behind
bright daylight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was kind of the huge turning point for entertainment in general. I mean, now watching superhero TV shows that are produced on a weekly basis where, there's seamless scenes of Superman flying around, shooting lasers out of his face, and you don't think much of it. It's more of the style of that they do it more than, oh my God, they can do it.
I think we are doing a Superman and Lois podcast soon, but when we did say at the start of that show, like, oh my God, these fight scenes look really good. They look better than the movies.
Yeah.
So we did mention it in passing, but it's not the, oh my God, anymore, Yeah,
it was more almost the style of it than the fact that they did it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know now that if you throw enough money at something, you can make something look pretty remarkable. That said, I mean, they still have some uncanny valley issues. I still am like, think that last shot of Princess Leia in Rogue One, for example, is like, why is she a cartoon all of a sudden?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But other people also had no idea Grand Moff Tarkin was a dead guy when they went to go see that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's kind of amazing that they managed to pull all this off, and the credits roll for that movie, and they're not that long.
Yeah, we were very specifically looking for how long the special effects credits were, and these days it takes 5 minutes to get through that.
Yeah,
and this was not.
Each company they've outsourced stuff.
Yeah,
to.
Exactly, and usually it's like, oh, this was made in Korea or something, but. So this movie is not all special effects. It's I think one of Steven Spielberg's best movies. Partially because of the source material. It's a really good story. It moves, but Spielberg also has this great ability to create tension. I mean, he did Jaws, but and it's widely known that the reason you don't see the shark till the end is because it wasn't working very well, and so it was kind of out of necessity. But it also, it makes it more scary when you can't see the shark because you're building up something in your head. In this movie, I think you actually see the first dinosaur. It's the Triceratops, maybe 45 minutes into it, but you don't see like the full T-Rex until the halfway mark. And that scene is terrifying. I mean, not anymore because I've seen it 1,000 times, but it's still thrilling. Yeah, I guess I would say is a better word for it. And now like it's been copied so much, but like the very classic scene of the cup of water, just rippling, and then you can just hear the footsteps in the background, and just slowly builds and builds and builds. It's just like masterful how that's done. And like I said, like how much it's copied, like how much it's loved. And then the water ripple comes back later when Ian like looks over the side of the Jeep and it's in the footprint of the giant T-Rex, which makes it even creepier. So yeah, that like we were talking after we watched it. I think that scene is maybe 15-20 minutes long. Like it is a long scene, but you were just on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah, when I saw this movie the first time, I don't remember what candy I had, but I had I used to get a thing of candy and a giant Diet Coke. For whatever reason, Diet Coke was my go-to beverage at the theater.
Twizzlers?
Yeah, it was probably Hot Tamales, but
okay.
What I remember, I drank my whole soda, and by the time I left the theater, I had chewed the entire straw to pieces, had chewed the entire lid to pieces, and was making my way down the cup chewing it.
See, this is not surprising to me because Ryan used to chew pencils all the time. Like every single one of his pencils had chew marks on it.
Yeah,
so that's just a nervous habit.
Yeah. And so I went like I just shredded. Like I do wear one of those like night jaw guard things because I just grind my teeth at night. But that's the tension that this thing built. And honestly, it's the thing that every other director who's touched a Jurassic Park property, to me, has utterly failed at.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't really get how you people like the other Jurassic Park movies. Jurassic Park 2 I get, was because that's Spielberg still.
We tried to watch Jurassic World, and, I mean, we did. We watched the whole thing, but it's just from the beginning, like, how much CG can we throw into this movie? And it's like, here's a giant... like the whale shark or whatever it is that, you know, leaps out of the water, that's enormous, and like, that's not scary. It's
a spectacle.
Nothing in this movie is scary anymore, because they don't know how to do that,
or they knocked off all the edges for kids. I don't know what the answer exactly is, but it's so artless. The direction, there's no sense of like classic horror film scene setting that occurs versus the T-Rex scene, which geographically, by the way, we'll need to get into that, because it doesn't matter how many times I watch that movie, I cannot rationalize the geography of the T-Rex scene.
Yeah, I want to get back to that too. Go ahead.
But it's manages to grab you. It doesn't matter. I've seen this movie literally 30 times. In bits and pieces over the years, but definitely fully sat down and watched at least 15 or 20. And every time that scene still gets me because of the slow build. And then when you get there, it's not like, oh, it's Michael Myers with a knife. It's an effing T-Rex. Yeah. It can turn over your car. Things are going to go from horrible to worse, like over and over and over in this scene. It gets
real bad for those, and they're children that he's trying to eat. I mean, you can. Let me just say, so the kids that he cast in this movie, a lot of times, and especially in the 90s, there were some really irritating children in movies.
Oh yeah,
these kids are really good.
They are. I wanted to make sure we talked about that at some point.
And I don't know whether it was the fact that they were actually acting against a real dino head, which had to be a little scary, but I mean, you can feel their terror.
Yeah. They're managed to be movie precocious without being saccharine or twee. Which is incredible. Yeah. Like, that did not happen in movies back then.
And they have some funny lines, the two of them. And it's not like you like to say, joke-shaped things. It's actually relevant to the story. And they're funny lines.
Yeah. And they're siblings shitting on each other as we do. Yeah. Let's take each other down a peg, even when our lives are threatened, moment by moment. But they said in some doc that they cast the girl who plays Lex because she could scream super good, and indeed,
she's got a great scream.
Yeah,
but they're both actually good kid. I mean, I'm not saying they deserve Oscars for this, but it's not distracting. No, but I don't know what was going on in the 90s that people didn't understand, that as they were casting kids, every 15 years or so, you can see there's a new mode of having kids deliver lines because they all do it the same. Yeah.
And these kids don't really feel like they fit into that mold. They felt a little more natural than all that. And it
could partially be that I know Spielberg's really good at directing kids.
Yeah, I think at this point he had a gaggle of them living with him. Yeah. I mean, he and Kate Capshaw adopted like 45 kids or something.
For sure. But I mean, going back to like E.T. and, their kids in Jaws, and he probably knew how to get them to, emote naturally.
Yeah. But yeah, the T-Rex scene, the other movies just never were able to recapture that. I appreciate that in The Lost World, Spielberg said, we're not doing that. We're doing like kind of a classic Valley of Gwangi, this is a dinosaur in a place it's not supposed to be, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. That was that was where he was going. This thing is not supposed to be in the city, and it is, and it's causing panic, and we have precedent for how that's supposed to work. And I think it worked very, very well in the context of that film. But that was a different kind of roller coaster ride than this one, which was meant to kind of we're just going to elicit terror for an hour straight in this movie.
So getting back to you said let's talk about the design of the T-Rex enclosure. There are a few things here and there that have always stood out to me as that's a little weird, that's a little bothersome. I just want to touch on a couple of them. So in the beginning, at the dig site,
the fully structured dinosaur skeleton that...
Well, yes, that too, but that I can kind of gloss over. The thing that bothers me about that scene is they're surrounded by what appear to be their dig team. And they're using this new, computerized scanner, and of course that's the introduction to we'll be out of a job soon, that idea, kind of foreshadowing. And then suddenly there's just a kid there to ask questions and to needle Sam Neill. And that kid has always bothered me. It would be okay if they're tourists
those were tourists.
They needed to be more clear about it because they looked like they were all there digging.
Yeah.
And then he seems out of place to me.
Yeah, I mean, I never questioned it because I believed those, a good portion of those people to be tourists who are...
And that kid seems like 90s kid actor.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of sticks out.
Yeah.
But then also, yes, the space between the bottom of the T-Rex enclosure and the top is unclear. And I think the most glaring example of why that is when Laura Dern is searching for them. And she is up at the top with her flashlight and then switches to her immediately being down by the car that has fallen all the way down. It's are there stairs somewhere?
The only way I can rationalize it geographically is the place where Sam Neill and the kids go over is a narrow and sudden valley drop off on that must be level on either side, because otherwise, but the geography of it doesn't suggest that.
No, it doesn't,
because it's the goat is right there on the other side. The T-Rex has to walk over to the fence to tear it down and walk over it, but then when the car goes back over the same wall, it suddenly plummets 60 feet.
Yeah, it's this big tree.
So,
which makes for a good action scene, but it just bothers me a little bit, but again.
And by 93, we knew enough to know people were going to be rewatching movies over and over. So you can't be that was just because they thought people would watch the movie once and kind of not pay attention. So.
I guess the third thing that bothers me, and you touched on this earlier, which maybe I shouldn't be so hard on, but so when he's talking about chaos theory and both of the other doctors are what? It's a little unbelievable to me because they are scientists.
I have no cross-disciplinary science was not a huge thing back then.
I guess not, but then they're in the car and he's trying to, let me give you an example.
Well, that's for the audience.
Yeah, I know, but it just bothers me when Laura Dern makes the whole, that went right over my head, she's a big dum-dum. I don't know.
Well, it's because he uses terms that we use commonly now that we didn't in 93. He says, it's the butterfly effect. Well, everyone knows now what the butterfly effect is.
I just would think that... Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Having had worked around faculty long enough and researchers, the guys in the computing science department are not talking to the guys in the paleontology department. Believe me.
Okay.
They just never see each other or know each other.
That's fair.
I mean, occasionally that stuff does, they find a way to work together or whatever, and that's more encouraged and more common now. But, I mean, the whole thing of we're afraid of computers, at this point in 1993, there's no way my dad had a computer on his desk at work.
Trying to remember if my dad's office got one.
I mean, my parents still thought the internet was a fad in, 98.
Really?
Kind of,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I think we were a step up because Doug was,
Yeah.
in the field of computer science at that point. And yeah, he was writing software for them probably about this time. So maybe a little later. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard to remember a pre-cell phone, pre-internet. Not everyone had a computer or access to a computer. I mean, I half chose my dorm and my university based on the computing resources that I thought would be available to me because I didn't believe I would have a computer when I went to college. My parents were kind of at the 11th hour, there's this deal at Best Buy and how about this one? I'm like, I know nothing about computers. That sounds fine.
I didn't get my computer till sophomore year.
Yeah.
I was using the crappy word processor.
Yeah, I mean, what people would come use my computer. I was, the computer service for several people on my floor who needed to print paper or print papers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the idea of the computers are going to screw everything up for us. This movie doesn't necessarily say that, which had kind of been traditionally how things were posited. I mean, this is the same guy. Crichton worked on the screenplay as well as writing the novel. He'd also written Westworld, which clearly the computers have a hard day there.
By the way, that's going to happen at Disney World now.
What is?
They're making animatronic characters to roam around the parks.
That's true. And every once in a while now they're talking about, actually, we have found some dinosaur DNA. What can we do with this?
Nothing. You saw the movie? Do nothing with it. Put it in a museum.
It also does, as far as technologies, it has this very adorable scene where they're like, we use virtual reality to tie together. And it has the guy wearing the gloves, which everyone was convinced it was going to be about gloves and goggles back. And they still are. I had a 20-minute Twitter debate with some VR specialist this week when the whole Facebook Zuckerberg thing was announced. But you just see this guy twisting like a pipe of DNA, and you're just like, that's
not how that works.
That doesn't make any sense. You've spent so much computing power doing that.
But that scene is really cute with the animated Mr. DNA strand, and it's kind of an obvious way to get the audience up to speed, but it works.
Well, the funny thing is, I think if they did that, explaining how vaccines work, everyone would, you'd have all the vax deniers going oh. It's just make something that simple for people to understand.
Let's not get into that now.
But I'm serious. I took biology in college, and I understood a lot of what they were talking about when we got into DNA. Because of that everyone did. We're all like, oh, it's Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What a double helix is, and I understand, what you're, and I understand why the dinosaur has the screen with GATC, printed on his face, and
that's a great shot, by the way.
It's such a bullshit shot, but it works.
Well, yes, it's manipulative, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unmotivated from a lighting standpoint, and that's always
that's true.
I kind of laugh about that one, but anyway, it's the one you started talking about, design of the dino pen for the T-Rex, but I wanted to talk about the design itself of the film. Up until this point, if you went to a movie or you watched a movie, take, the 76 King Kong film, when they would show someone jumping into a Jeep, in general, they were going to be jumping into whatever Jeep they got off the like backlot vehicles that, you know, the studio owned already. This thing, totally believable in a 1990s context of what an amusement park would look like, of what the merchandise would look like, that there's a cohesive look and feel to everything. And this is really the first movie I remember ever doing something like that. That wasn't like everything's taking place on the Enterprise, or this is like Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of the scene in Spaceballs when they're talking about everything's branding.
Yeah.
Spaceballs, the action figures, you know, Spaceballs, the cereal. But it is believable in the context of what they're doing in the movie. And so Ryan and I took our honeymoon to Orlando.
Yes.
And we went to the Universal Park. And there is well, it was at the time probably.
There still is.
Is it still there?
I think so.
There's a Jurassic Park section. And that visitor center looks exactly like the visitor center from the movie. And all the stuff is laid out exactly the same. So it's just like, here's an immediate advertisement for this theme park. But, you know, that wasn't it was probably built 5 years after the movie came out.
About that.
But, yeah. It was kind of amazing to see in real life. Like, oh my God, this is exactly like the movie.
Yeah, I mean, everything felt so kind of like... It creates a reality in which you can kind of buy into the idea of like, okay, they had the dinosaurs, a super rich guy made dinosaurs, and, you know, there are attractions, so how do you do that? Well, you're not going to do it like it's come see the animals at Arbuckle Wilderness. It's, you know, it's not going to be Tiger King. This guy is going to build the Disney World, you know, equivalent. And, you know, what I said at the beginning, you know, John Hammond's kind of this Walt Disney comparable figure. One of the things that, you know, I think Nathan and I have talked a bit about it in the Epcot podcast from like 3 years ago, but Walt Disney, after he kind of got out of, you know, he got tired of working in animation, he just couldn't keep focus on things. His brain was firing too fast. He somehow got into this whole thing of miniatures. And if you go to the Walt Disney Family Museum, the Disney Family Museum that's in San Francisco on the Presidio, you can see a lot of the miniatures he both purchased and built. Mm-hmm. And this is like 45, 50-year-old Walt. And that's kind of what ended up leading to him wanting to build Disneyland, was he was doing this simultaneously. And so you kind of have the reference to the flea circus. And then you can kind of push to, which, like, you know, they're showing like John Hammond going, oh, I built a flea circus. It's like, were people into flea circuses in 1950 or whatever year that would have been? I think we were a little beyond that already. I mean, that's kind of more of like a 1920s sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he's also kind of this like tech magnet, and Walt Disney had definitely gotten into, you know, being a futurist and had wanted to do, you know, Epcot, which again referenced the Epcot podcast. So, you know, him somehow stumbling upon whatever was going on with genetic research and having just enough information to be dangerous, which is really what this movie's about.
Yeah.
I mean, the very idea of, well, we're going to breed a brontosaurus. Okay, sure. It's a lot of work to have that. And you can't have it just wandering around a playground stomping on children. But it's not going to murder people.
Right.
but then going, yeah, we think we can contain these, you know, horribly violent animals. A T-Rex. And
let's,
you know,
make some velociraptors.
I mean, and they get into, in the second one, you find out they've been cloning pterodactyls. And you're like, so you got something that can fly away that's horribly vicious?
Yeah. Well, and just the hubris of thinking that someone like Newman is not going to come along and try to steal this stuff. Someone's going to do that. Someone's going to try to replicate it elsewhere. Like, the thought that this is going to be contained to this park.
Yeah.
After it's already been done and people have seen how much money you're making, like, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's the dinosaurs evolving as what happens in this movie, because they use the weird frog DNA, or if, stuff gets stolen. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, the entire notion of we can predict what will happen and it will happen that way. I mean, it's something...
Which is the point of Jeff Goldblum's character.
Yeah. It's the same hubris you see often from people behind podiums, in news conferences, and you're just like, you're sitting there as a basic citizen going, you fool, there's no way that's going to pan out the way you think it's going to.
Right.
I am sitting here thinking of 5 reasons that's not going to work. Zuckerberg sitting there with his stupid VR meeting place. It's like...
Why is this needed?
What is this for? Who is this for? Why would I strap cameras to my face all day when I can have one camera and do Zoom? And as creative as you've gotten, is you're going to send everyone to work as cartoon characters?
That's not distracting.
And you know what people really like is when they have to wear something on their face for 8 hours a day. For like, who is this for? And that's the kind of... You see these, the plans rolled out, and that's really, of course, at the beginning of the film, you get those great shots of Sam Neill and Laura Dern, oh my God, the power of this place is how she describes it later in the film. And it's neat. There's no question. It's super cool. But also thinking that you have a chance of ever understanding what you've set in motion. And I think that's really kind of the big takeaway, and that's why it's been memed so much. Mm-hmm. There's so many good lines in the film.
Lines that I say on a regular basis that I don't even think about. Like, clever girl, and what's the other one? I mean, the one that I already brought up before, the Jeff Goldblum line, but man, I can't think of the other one.
Like, life finds a way, and
Yeah.
So, I mean, and you see people all the time doing that as you see the latest science report.
Hang on to your butts.
So, that is probably the number one thing I have incorporated as someone who routinely has systems crash and has to bring them back up. There's a lot of hold on to your butts.
So this wasn't Samuel Jackson's first movie, but I think it was his first, big block. Well, okay, he was in Coming to America, but he had such a small role, it's not really...
Yeah.
I mean, he had a smallish role in this, but he had a bigger role. But, I mean, he stands out even then, even with this cast. I mean, he spends the entire movie with a cigarette, just barely hanging out of his mouth. That is a talent.
Yeah, it's also something that you're not supposed to smoke around 90s era computers.
Of course not, but yeah.
It's... I just watched something else he was in that was an early Samuel Jackson. I was like, oh yeah, he was in this. I'm trying to remember what it is now.
And he gets eaten by animals a lot.
Yeah. I definitely had the thought of wait a minute, they just killed the black guy. How many other people have been killed? And I was like, okay, they did kill Newman.
They did. Okay, that actually reminds me of something that I've never voiced, but does bother me about this. We see in the beginning of the movie how many people are staffed on this island. And then suddenly when this hurricane blows up, they are all gone.
There's a line somewhere in there about everyone is basically Hammond intentionally did this at this point so it wouldn't be all busy and crazy because they're still building the park. Mm-hmm. My belief is... because they say we're sending everyone to the mainland. It's not because of the storm. It's everyone's getting shore leave because when they come back, it's the final push to get the park finished, which we're going to do now that we're going to have clearance from the attorneys.
Got it.
I think that's the ... that I've gotten from why...
I guess that's viable enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think they would need a few more people for this test run, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that this whole place that requires feeding with like steer to feed animals that who's going to take care of the steer while
we're doing the test run.
There's a lot
or if anything goes wrong, like poorly thought out.
I mean, there is the whole conversation about we've automated everything, and then Hammond's having the conversation with Ellie over.
Yeah, but
I figured it out. Less automation. We're going to have real people and
yeah.
Also,
sorry. When Hammond is showing them the video, it's suggested that he is supposed to be there at every single video.
Yeah.
Because he has to interact with himself in the video, and that's how the cloning happens.
Which is utterly unrealistic for like a millionaire sort of.
Yeah.
My assumption would be that would be the one they'd have for prestige clients when he is there. But
sure.
They'd have, I mean, if I was to rationalize it, because yes, you couldn't even do it if you were like, well, how much do we have to pay Sally the docent so that she's always here when people come?
Right. If you want to change characters.
Yeah, and we have to remake this, by the way, every year or two, because Sally's going to age, have different hair, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. The film wasn't going to work for very long or very well after a while. But yeah, I mean, nonetheless, I mean, it's a brilliant little way of using your two dino scientists as your POV who are going through this thing of seeing, it's kind of a ride. Like, this is a weird way to experience science, but this is often the way kind of the masses are shown this stuff. And that goes back to, tent shows and circuses and all that of, how would you learn about things if you were out in the middle of nowhere? Well, it'd be, you'd go to the circus or you'd go to, whatever, and someone would be like, Dr. Electro is going to show you amazing electric experiments so you can see the latest and what's, this is that in your Sears and Roebuck catalog where how you were finding out what was going on about in the outside world. So I thought it was kind of an interesting way to kind of, he's doing it as a show because he's a showman. This is how that he's going to present it, and it is digestible. We all got it. So
I know you want to talk about Laura Dern.
I always want to talk about Laura Dern.
Laura Dern in her shorts.
Yeah.
Which are highly impractical. Impractical? What am I trying to say?
Impractical.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yes.
Impractical.
Why are they impractical?
Because they're on a jungle island.
She's supposed to be at an amusement park.
Yeah, I know, but they're like foreign plants and like...
She's not supposed to be getting out of the Jeep.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Also, like who else is wearing the shorts? Muldoon.
Yeah.
They're both running. I had the thought last night, or I guess we watched it 2 nights ago, when they're both off to turn back the power back on. They step out of the door. We're gonna go turn on the power with the power of our shorts. Short action.
So yeah, I got it. I'm not going to lie. Like, I had a huge crush on Laura Dern, not just from this movie. I'd seen her previously in a couple of things, including Wild at Heart. And it probably sounds a little weird to get a crush on someone from Wild at Heart, but here we are. And yeah, so this movie didn't help. I'll put it that way. I mean, I was 18 years old, and there's Laura Dern up there in all her glory, running around, and she was awesome. I mean,
she's really great in this because she's really viable as a knowledgeable scientist, but she's also like kind of dorky. Like,
she seems very much in this, like,
seems very much like a scientist that would be in the field.
I mostly have known engineers like who are like PhDs and whatnot, but if someone who talked like her came through the door. Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, she also, the fact that she has confidence in herself.
Yeah.
And kind of commands whatever conversation she's in. That's kind of a level of like, earned your respect through what I have accomplished, and I'm not going to be shy about it. And you see that in a lot of PhDs.
And I love the scene where she's kind of having a discussion with Hammond about who's going to turn the power back on, and he's like, oh, but you can't go because you're a lady. He's kind of stumbling through that.
He knows he shouldn't be saying it.
He knows he shouldn't be saying it, and then she's like, kind of rolls her eyes and goes, we'll talk about the sexism later, but I'm going to go now. But that's a nice scene. I know, like, people would probably think it was overkill in 2021, or, oh, you shouldn't even have to have that conversation. But yeah, in the 90s you did. Especially if someone of that age, you know?
Still with people of that age.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'm just saying I think there's
still dads telling me to, you know, Jamie shouldn't have to worry about, you know, or whatever. And I'm like, Jamie is fully capable of handling herself. Do not worry about Jamie. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I think it's a viable scene. I think it's a good scene. It helps with the character and kind of sets her up, kind of for you're having confidence in her. She's not going to just scream when she goes off to go turn the power back on. When she's, you know, fighting for her life, you kind of get kind of this tougher core that she's got. Yeah.
But like even the kids like have a purpose in this. We've talked about, you know, how good I think the actors are, but as far as like they're pretty smart kids. Like the little Tim is interested in dinosaurs, which helps because then he gets to ask Dr. Grant a bunch of stuff, and then he gets to tell the audience a bunch of stuff. But like in that final scene when they're being chased around the visitor center, they make some actually pretty smart moves in the kitchen. Like they're absolutely terrified, but they're not. They don't just sit there and scream,
right?
And like, you know, help us, someone save us.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that because it keeps the movie going.
Yeah. The kids are kind of funny because they're the kids the younger. If there's anything I don't buy in this movie, is that the younger kid has been reading these even aimed at adult pop science books.
Dr. Grant's book.
Grant's book.
Which is probably for other scientists.
Might be, might not be. And that's what I wanted to talk about was there was this weird bubble around this point. I still remember being a junior in high school, and for some reason in science and chemistry class, they made us do a book report on a science book. And the whole requirement was we were to go to the library and check out a book and from the science Dewey Decimal area and just do a report on it. And I checked out, I think I checked out the Dinosaur Heresies, which is a terrible place to start. But at the time, there were kind of these warring paleontologists in kind of pop culture. And this has all been forgotten. There's no famous paleontologists in 2021. But at the time, there was Gould and there was Jack Horner. And there was also Robert Bacher. And he was the guy who was kind of the rogue dude. Well, it took a while for me to figure out why he was a rogue dude. It was basically because he didn't go through the basics of scientific publishing. He just published whatever he just found someone who would publish his stuff. So this is remarkable. And he called his book The Dinosaur Heresies, like, oh, well, people aren't in agreement with me and won't approve my papers to go forward because my ideas are so crazy that I'm going to just go ahead and do it. And I don't know if he's really been borne out over the years or not. I don't honestly remember what was in the book or any of that. But Horner was kind of, and Gould were kind of the guys who were a little bit, you know, more establishment, whatever. But it was an interesting period. I mean, we talk about all the ideas this movie introduced. One of those was dinosaurs became birds, which everyone kind of says now, and just kind of takes as fact. This movie kind of, I happen to take Age of the Dinosaurs, was a very popular class at UT. Everyone was always scrambling to get into it after Jurassic Park. I sat in an auditorium with 490 of my closest friends while I took this class. And, you know, the first thing they do when you get in there is like, here's all the things that are wrong in Jurassic Park. Like, day one. Like, let us dispel you. You know, let's talk about the diplodocus, not the diplodocus, whatever the thing is with the frill. They're like, one, that's the thing lizards have. Lizards aren't dinosaurs. We already established from the movie that they're birds. So they're from a different strain. That also would be a defense technique. Why would you be doing your defense technique to make yourself look bigger when you're about to attack something? Like, that just doesn't make any damn sense. So, and if you had like the spitting mechanism, which there's no evidence that this has, like, why would you jump up at someone, hiss at them, and then spit at them? Like, that's all movie magic. The funny thing is, the real dinosaur that's based on is actually the size of the raptor that they show in the movie.
Oh gosh, that would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is like plot based because they need it to be small and cute.
Yeah. Ironically, there was no raptor they knew of that was as big as that one, even when the book came out. But one was discovered in Utah as they were filming, called the Utah raptor. And so they actually had one that was that big that they could go, oh, well, we're going to say it's a Utah raptor if anybody asks.
That was fortuitous.
So, yeah, they for some reason they were like swapping the sizes of dinosaurs out that people didn't know particularly well.
Well, also, like, aren't some of the dinosaurs, like, the different breeds just millions of years apart?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't remember specifically which ones.
They wouldn't have known, like, how those dinosaurs were going to interact with each other.
Right.
So that's another problem.
Yeah.
That's not addressed.
Yeah.
And not in the Jurassic period either.
Yeah, they just use that as a cool...
They think it's a cooler name.
Yeah. But yeah, it at least got, you know, me interested enough. I was already kind of interested in dinosaurs. There were kind of these guys on TV talking at the time about, you know, what they'd found lately. There was a whole thing you could do. I think it was a video game sort of thing where it was a Jurassic Park video game where you could click on it, up would come videos of these scientists talking about, oh, the Gallimimus, and they'd sit there and did it. So yeah, there were these kind of weird pop celebrities in the mode of I almost said Neil Gaiman, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who,
very different person.
Yeah, at the time, who and if you watch, like, I had VHS tapes of like the making of this movie, and I think all of that stuff's probably on YouTube now. But yeah, I mean, they were absolutely consulting with these guys. And if you go to the Dinosaur Museum in Bozeman, Montana, which I highly, highly recommend, I will now confess I skipped half a day of a conference to go to it. You know, that's where, like, I think Horner was associated and all that. And they have like 40 Triceratops skulls. They've got like 2 or 3 full T-Rexes there, and it's this, like, Bozeman is not a huge town, but they have like because they're doing all the digging in Montana. So anyway, I think it's a really interesting artifact of when people kind of cared about this stuff slightly more as well. Like, it seems like science kind of comes and goes in waves of what people know and care about.
Well, and like, we talked about the Jurassic World and its sequels, and I think half of the stuff they put in there are just made up dinosaurs. Like, no one cares.
Yeah, Jurassic World. Yeah, I know some of our listeners love that movie. I'm very sorry, it's garbage. But the whole idea that, one, you're showing a completely packed park, and then Bryce Dallas Howard standing there going, oh, but no one's coming to the park anymore. Like, all evidence to the contrary, but okay.
Also, they have no evacuation process.
Yeah. So we had to splice together dino DNA because somehow seeing fucking dinosaurs isn't novel enough.
We have to make, like, spliced together monsters.
Yeah. So we've made freaks of nature, which
Yeah.
could cause God knows what, because we refuse to learn.
This is no longer like
our
a scientific
attorneys
study.
And, insurance adjusters totally thought this was a great idea.
It's a spectacle now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they followed up with that in the next one.
Because I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah. And there's another one coming, shortly, which will have the original cast back, apparently.
Oh, maybe I will have to watch that one.
Yeah, because they got Sam Neill and Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum.
Well, Goldblum will do anything.
Yeah, I think the kids, I know that the girl went on to be like a fine arts painter. Like
Ariana Richards is her name. And then Joseph Mazzello is the boy.
Yeah, and I don't know what became of him, but she would pop up in kind of the like whatever happened to stuff, and I think partially because she's like, come buy my paintings, but yeah, she seemed to do pretty well for herself.
So Ariana Richards has one of the most unfortunate lines in this entire movie, and it is not her fault.
I know.
I know you know, and the listeners know what I'm about to say. But like we were saying earlier, computers weren't a huge thing back then. Mm-hmm. So you had to walk the audience through it.
Yeah. And
when she sits down at the computer, she says, "A Unix system, I know this," which in 2021 is so cringeworthy. Even 5 years after that, it was cringe. I walked into my first computer science class, and we had a Unix system, and guess what everyone said? So yeah, I feel like every time we see this movie, I feel so bad for her, because she's just, everyone shouts that at her probably, because she didn't do that many other movies. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, it was a funny representation of computers for a movie that...
Well, they had to make it all graphics based so that the audience would kind of know what was going on, even though she's just turning the power back on. She could have easily been coding lines.
Well, I mean, it's not alone at all in what it's doing here. I mean, the idea that our searches would be physically represented on the screen was, I mean, it's in Until the End of another Sam Neill movie, Until the End of the World, when they're I'm searching.
Yeah.
So it happens a lot during this era. It wasn't really till we were all hands on keyboard and basically understood. I will be curious, because now apparently our generation are like our parents were with cars. Like, we understand what's under the hood and like how the different pieces, like they understand how the cars work, and we understand basically that there's code under things, not that everything's not just a shiny button you push. If that won't make more sense again in like another 15-20 years of like, oh yeah, because that was always the promise of cyberpunk, right? Was you're gonna jack into the computer, man. Johnny Mnemonic, you're gonna jack into the computer and your consciousness is gonna be floating around cyberspace as you have you use your VR mitts to dig through file systems and look at files instead of just going, is it this? Tap, 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 tap. Nope. Or is it this? Nope. Which is how things actually work. But yeah, that scene is, as Marshall would say, kind of cringe.
But all in all, it's aged very well.
Yeah. I think because Spielberg was really smart about... I remember it coming out, hearing it was coming out, and going... I knew kind of who Sam Neill was because I'd seen Until the End of the World.
He has a really weird accent in this, by the way, because he started out trying to do an American accent, and then I don't know, I can't remember if it was Spielberg or who just said, "Oh, just use your New Zealand accent," and then he ended up doing just a combination of the two.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, sometimes it's a weird mishmash.
Yeah.
But it's not, it doesn't ruin the movie.
Which is crazy, because this came out, and then I guess he must have left here and gone to go do the piano, because the piano was out like the same year.
Yeah. This was a really, really packed year for movies. And so Spielberg did this movie, and then while it was still in editing, went off to do Schindler's List.
That's the thing that's
like,
brain melting.
He had quite a year.
Yeah.
I mean, you could not ask for two more wildly different movies.
I mean, and it was an exciting time to be in film school, to be candid.
Sure.
Like, you were going to see The Piano on Saturday, but you'd just seen Jurassic Park with the same actors. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen now. It's more likely to happen of like, oh, Nicole Kidman's in White Lotus, but she's also going to be, playing Aquaman's mom. So clearly that stuff's still happening. But yeah, I mean, when I was 18, I mean, that was just, you went to the movies and you didn't really think about, I'm going to see a blockbuster so much as I'm going to the movies.
Right.
And yeah, so it was, Schindler's List being its own standalone thing, but to be in both headspaces at the same time, I mean, I'm sure it was a relief to be working on Jurassic Park. When
Yeah, I think it actually happened, because he would work on Schindler's List during the day. I mean, obviously he was in Europe doing that movie, but then he would edit at night. Jurassic Park was probably like a nice head clearer, from the just complete darkness of that movie. Yeah,
I mean, in 93, I guess Schindler's List came out that winter, right?
Yeah.
That fall.
Yeah.
The 93, 94, what he was able to accomplish, within a 3-year period from Jurassic Park starting to Schindler's List winning the Academy Award.
I mean, those were both in the same Oscars.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they were picking up tons of technical awards, and then he was getting all of the directing awards and all that. He kind of cleaned house that year.
Yeah, it was really an incredible achievement when you think about directors' variety of palettes and what they're able to work in.
Well, I mean, honestly, when I heard he was doing Schindler's List, I was like, really, Spielberg? Okay. And then I saw it and I was like, holy crap. I mean, because everything else I'd seen from him was just, fun blockbuster.
Yeah.
I mean, this was quite a turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's kind of, I don't want to make Jurassic Park too heavy. I mean, it's got some, obviously, a lot of the stuff in my canon when I'm talking about it, I'm kind of unpacking and realizing a lot of it has to do with, like, what is the nature of existence? Should things exist? What is human consciousness? Well,
I mean, they should be movies that make you think, right?
Yeah. And a lot of that gets sold through he didn't go and hire, Pam Anderson to play Ellie Sattler, right? He went, sorry, Pam Anderson, if you're offended. But
if Pam Anderson is listening to this.
I was trying to imagine that world for a second there. Pam Anderson going, fuck you, at that moment. But like, yeah, he went and got like Laura Dern, who had like indie movie cred and, was a second generation Hollywood talent, and Sam Neill, who'd had all kinds of indie movie bona fides, and freaking Richard Attenborough as John Hammond. I mean, his character could have been, quite despicable, but he's makes him such a jolly old grandfather that you kind of just feel bad for him. Yeah, he done just fucked up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the curve of it is really his realization of getting out of his own way and not believing he can control everything like the police.
I mean, even like 3/4 of the way through this movie, he's still hanging on to maybe this part could work.
Yeah. And
Laura Dern has a great scene when she takes him down.
Yeah.
It's like,
he's not the mayor in Jaws.
This is over.
Yeah. Except it's not. Because we gotta make more movies.
No, I mean the park.
I know. It's like, yeah, that's the most unbelievable thing about the whole thing of Jurassic World is that anyone ever approved any of that ever again. It's like we've had 3 movies to show why this is a bad idea.
Does this take place in a different universe? Because otherwise,
but yeah, it's I think an amazing little time capsule of kind of what was going on in science and technology in 93, both within the film and kind of the forces around it. there's no like real political angle to it, but there's kind of these ethical angles and the how we think of how we're actually implementing science as we're going forward. And living beings are not attractions necessarily. Although I really want to go to the drive-through nature park south of us.
Well, I mean, people have also gotten a little frustrated with zoos in the past, 10, however many years.
Yeah.
Especially the ones where, the animals are really, really caged.
Yeah.
And something like San Diego's a little bit better. They have a little bit more room to run around. But, yeah, it's like, what are the ethics around zoos?
Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting time capsule from an acting standpoint, and but I also just think it's a blueprint for how you can do a family friendly movie that's going to scare the shit out of everybody. I saw this movie 3 times in the theater. I saw it with my dudes opening night. I can't remember who was there. I just remember going to Taco Cabana with I think Nathan and Jason. I think that's who was there. And then I saw it again with the girl I was dating I wasn't dating her anymore. Who did I see it with? I don't know. And then the 3rd time, my brother's friend was in town, and somehow like there was this whole scheduling thing. So I had to go see it with my brother's friend's mom.
Okay.
I'd known her since I was in like 4th grade or something. So I sat with my brother's friend's mom and watched it. I just remember watching her just jump in her seat over and over the whole time. And she was doing things, just grabbing my arm and then, that
was what was fun knowing about the jump scares. Like, I got to watch everyone else. Like, I turned my head. Like as soon as she is in with the pipes and turns on the power, that's when it happens. Not just looking at everyone else screaming their head off. I think Rebecca clawed my arm.
But yeah, I mean, filmmakers should be looking to this as much as they look to Psycho for the shower scene, in my opinion.
This is how you do a movie that actually makes you think, but is highly enjoyable.
Yeah.
At the same time. Like, those don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Oh, and before we go, we never talked about the score by John Williams.
Iconic score. No, it didn't. You know what? I think he probably beat himself out at the Oscars that year because he did the score for Schindler's List as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what won, but it's does kind of classic Williams-ish. Here's your theme and refrain, and everyone's kind of got a theme, and I think it of course big John Williams horns in it.
Somewhat ruined for me by the song that I sang at the beginning of this podcast, which is not mine. It's from an internet thing, and every time I hear the music, that is what I hear. Those lyrics. That is what we sang in Hawaii.
That's right.
We got to one of the state parks, and it really looked like we were in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were not on the same island, but it still looks similar. But
yeah, I mean the score. I think the score. I think it was one of those ones that actually did like sell records. Like people actually went and bought it.
Oh sure.
It fell kind of into the same world of everything else he's kind of done that just instantly becomes a thing. And I've seen a lot of chatter lately about how the Marvel movies have kind of failed to give their characters themes. And aside from Captain America, I kind of agree. I couldn't tell you what the Iron Man theme is.
Yeah.
I know there is one that when I hear it, I'm kind of like,
that's art. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, John Williams just has such a knack for creating instantly memorable themes.
Earworms.
That are, I mean, you can identify them as, oh, this sounds like John Williams, but they all are kind of different from each other.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing.
Yeah, and he manages to really kind of capture, okay, this is what we're going to play when we see a freaking dinosaur for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be of epic scope. But he also is able to pull in kind of the menace of, as the score goes on, of everything that's going on, and do all the, necessary, string pulls and horn blows as, that people are being attacked, and punctuate the action. There's also scenes where there is no music for a long time, where it's just kind of sound effects, and when the music does come back in, it's like,
oh shit, here comes a dinosaur.
I think one of those scenes is like when you mentioned the scene with Ellie coming and looking for Sam Neill again. I'm hand gesturing a flashlight like it's going to help. But she, it's him kind of going, oh, seeing the footprints, and you hear it in all those sound effects, and then the music almost acts like a sound effect to go, we got to get going. Audience, we got to get going.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, it's ridiculous to talk too much about John Williams. You guys all know, the power of John Williams. But anyway, I didn't want to not talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've gone way over time, so I want to kind of wrap it up. Sorry. But no, it's fine. But yeah, it has a lot of things. We've seen it enough. We see the pieces of the machinery of how it works. You pick out the flaws. But as far as like, hey, we know those things, and we still are willing to put it on every couple of years. It's
been endlessly copied. It's, again, another one of those movies that I will pause and watch it if it's on, and still entertained every single time.
Yeah. And it's got Laura Dern in shorts.
And it has Laura Dern in shorts.
Which is not the worst thing in the world. All right. You got anything else that you want
to... I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Another Canon episode. So we'll be back soon with something. I don't know. I'm not even sure when I'm going to release this. So y'all have a good one.
Bye.
Holy fucking shit, it's a dinosaur. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Oh my fucking god, fucking dinosaurs. Holy shit, what the fuck?
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.